The humans arrived quietly, almost like shadows slipping across the surface of a new world. On the outer edge of the Zerion Empire, a crowd of aliens waited, proud and confident. They had spent centuries perfecting their society, their technology, their strength. They were used to being admired, even feared. Among them stood Commander Lysra, her tall frame gleaming with silver armor-like skin, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the massive courtyard. She was the perfect image of power and pride, the human who had been chosen to represent Earth. Captain Aaron Miles walked calmly into the center of the courtyard. He did not rush, he did not bow, he did not flinch. His steps were steady, purposeful, yet unassuming. His uniform was simple, a contrast to the intricate patterns of Zerion ceremonial wear. But he carried himself with quiet confidence that seemed to pull the attention of everyone around him. Lysra's eyes scanned him, trying to measure the man, trying to find weakness. She stepped forward, her voice clear and commanding. "Welcome to the heart of the Zerion Empire, human. Witness our greatness. See what your species could never achieve." Her tone was proud, almost daring him to question her words. Aaron simply nodded, his face calm, unreadable. His silence immediately drew attention. The crowd murmured, confused. A human was supposed to tremble, to speak words of awe or fear. But this one, he said nothing. Lysra's pride flared. She raised her voice, making it echo across the courtyard. "Do you not speak? Are your words too weak to honor us?" she demanded. Her question carried both challenge and disbelief. Aaron tilted his head slightly, as if studying the walls, the architecture, the patterns of movement in the guards around him. He did not answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost soft. "I see." That was all that the Zerions gasped. One word, and yet it carried more weight than any speech Lysra could have delivered. Her chest tightened. How dare a human, a species they had considered insignificant, respond with such simple composure? Trying to regain control, Lysra took a step closer. "Do you deny our greatness? Do you claim your species is better than ours?" Her voice was sharp, challenging, trembling slightly under the pressure of her own pride. Aaron's eyes met hers steadily. He did not look away. "I do not deny it. I simply observe," he said quietly. His calmness made her chest tighten further. He did not bow, did not boast, did not tremble. He simply stood there, assessing, understanding, and refusing to give her the satisfaction of fear or flattery. The crowd of Zerions whispered among themselves, confusion turning into unease. How could one human, alone, show such quiet strength in the presence of their empire's might? They had expected groveling, awe, perhaps even begging. And yet this human. He challenged them with silence. Lysra's pride burned. She tried to speak again, louder this time, projecting authority. "You stand in the heart of greatness, human. Speak your admiration. Show respect." Aaron tilted his head once more, looking past her, looking at the massive walls, the sky filled with ships, the hum of advanced machines in the distance. Then he simply said, "I see enough." His words were minimal, but the calm certainty behind them struck harder than any insult. For the first time, Lysra felt the sting of uncertainty. She had spoken proudly, expecting words to impress, to intimidate, to remind a human of their place. Instead, the silence and simplicity of this one man, this human, made her question everything she had assumed about strength, about pride, about power. And in that quiet courtyard, where the Empire had always felt invincible, a single human's calm observation became louder than any speech, heavier than any display of force. Lysra realized, perhaps for the first time, that pride alone could not define strength, and that this human might show her more about power than she had ever imagined. The next morning, The Zarians prepared a grand demonstration to impress the human. Lysra walked beside Aaron, her glowing eyes flickering with a mixture of pride and curiosity. The demonstration was not small, it was a display of their empire's might. Machines whirred, energy beams cut across the sky, and soldiers moved with perfect precision. Every step, every motion, was designed to show that no species could ever match their strength. Lysra spoke proudly as they walked through the demonstration. Observe, human. Every system, every warrior, every machine is designed to surpass anything your kind could create. None could hope to stand against us. Aaron's eyes scanned the field calmly. He did not look impressed or frightened. He noticed the way certain soldiers moved too predictably, the slight delay in machine responses, the weak points hidden in their formations. His gaze was quiet but sharp, like a hawk studying its prey without emotion. The first part of the demonstration was a simulated battle. Mechanical drones swooped through the air, weapons sparking, firing at moving targets. The Zarian warriors dodged and countered with perfect coordination. Lysra turned to Aaron, expecting a gasp, a cheer, or even a trembling reaction. Aaron simply observed. Then the Zarians introduced him to a tactical exercise where he had to navigate a virtual battlefield, complete with traps, enemies, and obstacles. Other humans might have panicked, might have shouted or stumbled, but Aaron moved with steady steps. He analyzed patterns, anticipated movements, and adjusted his path with calm precision. The Zarian crowd murmured. Whispers spread. He is not afraid. He does not even react. Lysra felt her pride tighten. Do you even understand what you face? She demanded. Her voice, proud and sharp, rang across the simulation room. Aaron's reply was calm, neutral, almost gentle. I understand enough. The words were few, but they carried a weight that no demonstration could. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound of war. Lysra realized that she had always relied on speech, on pride, on showing off to gain respect. But this human, with nothing but calm observation and quiet confidence, had already unsettled her. As the simulation continued, Aaron's movements became more precise. He did not attack for glory, nor did he show off skill. He simply adapted, learning the system, exploiting weaknesses naturally, without arrogance. Every drone he avoided, every trap he navigated, demonstrated something more powerful than words or technology: thought, resilience, and composure. The other Zarians began to fidget. Their pride, once unquestioned, now felt fragile. The human did not boast. He did not demand praise. Yet the way he moved, the way he understood, spoke louder than any of their elaborate speeches. Finally, the simulation ended. The room fell silent. Lysra's pride wrestled with disbelief. She had spoken proudly, expecting to show this human the vastness of their empire, expecting awe, fear, or admiration. Instead, he had faced it all calmly, unafraid, and with insight far beyond her expectations. She stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly despite her effort to sound strong. You are not like the others. Most would bow, cry, or run. But you do nothing. Are you foolish or brave? Aaron looked at her with quiet certainty. Neither. I simply observe, understand, and act when needed. The words, though simple, struck deeper than any boast, any insult, or any display of power. Lysra realized something in that moment. Pride and loudness were not strength. Calm thought, observation, and decisive action, that was strength. And for the first time, she felt the stirrings of respect for a human, a species she had always underestimated. After the demonstration, the courtyard had emptied, leaving only Lysra and Aaron standing amid the hum of machines and the faint scent of burning energy from the simulations. The human's calm had unsettled her more than she cared to admit. Pride, she realized, was a fragile thing when confronted by quiet confidence. She approached him, her steps measured but deliberate. Her glowing eyes were sharper now, scrutinizing every movement, every line of his expression. "You are different," she said, her voice steady but tinged with confusion. "Most humans I have met would be trembling, praising us, begging for mercy. You do none of these things. You stand here as though nothing matters, and yet you understand more than any other human ever has." Aaron looked at her calmly, his posture relaxed but upright. "I do not need to prove myself with words," he said softly. His voice carried a quiet authority that made Lysra pause. "Actions speak louder than proclamations. You may speak proudly, but the value of words fades in the face of results." Lysra blinked, startled. She had never heard a human speak with such measured certainty. Her people had always relied on displays, ceremonies, and powerful speech to define strength. But here, standing before her, was a man who did not boast, yet commanded respect effortlessly. Actions? What can one human do against the might of the Zerion Empire? She asked, a hint of disbelief creeping into her tone. She tried to keep her pride intact, but she felt it wobble. Like a tower in a storm. Aaron tilted his head slightly, studying the nearest simulation panel. "Notice the flaws," he said quietly. "The gaps, the patterns that repeat, the weaknesses you never thought would matter. Even someone smaller, someone underestimated, can exploit them. Strength is not only measured in power, it is measured in thought, understanding, and resilience." Lysra's chest tightened. She could feel the truth in his words, uncomfortable as it was. She had spoken proudly, confident that her empire's achievements would leave him awed, perhaps even fearful. Instead, this human had spoken once, quietly, yet his insight cut through her confidence. A brief silence passed between them. The wind whispered through the open courtyard, and even the distant hum of machinery seemed to fade. Lysra found herself searching for words, but none came easily. She realized that she had always judged humans by their lack of obvious strength, their small size, their quiet nature. She had never expected them to be capable of something different, something stronger in its own way. Aaron took a small step closer, his eyes calm and steady. "I do not seek to challenge you, nor to show superiority. I simply see what is before me, and I act where necessary. Pride may be loud, but it is not always true strength." The words sank deep. Lysra's pride and certainty, built over decades, trembled for the first time. She had expected her voice, her demonstrations to be enough. But the human's quiet understanding, his patience and clarity, had unsettled her far more than any insult could. Finally she spoke, her voice quieter than before, almost reflective. You are nothing like I imagined. I thought humans were fragile, easily intimidated. But you are calm, decisive, unshaken, perhaps. There is more to your species than I understood." Aaron nodded slightly. "There is always more to understand," he said. "Strength is not always the loudest. Sometimes it is the quietest, yet it endures the longest." In that moment, Lysra realized that her lessons of pride and power were incomplete. She had spoken proudly, thinking words could impress, intimidate, or teach. But this human had already taught her more in silence and observation than she had ever learned from her own empire. And in that quiet courtyard, where her pride had once ruled unchallenged, a seed of respect for humanity began to grow slowly, quietly, yet unmistakably strong. The days that followed were quiet, but filled with subtle unease. The humans remained in the heart of the Zerion Empire, their presence both a curiosity and a challenge. Every demonstration of power, every display of precision and technology, was met with the calm, steady gaze of Aaron Miles. He did not clap, cheer, or express amazement. He simply observed. Lysra noticed it more than anyone. She had spoken proudly, shown him the empire at its best, and yet he never seemed impressed. Every simulation, every parade of soldiers, every technological marvel was met with quiet understanding. Aaron did not mock, did not underestimate, did not falter. He watched, calculated, and learned. Others Arians began to notice. Whispers spread across the corridors and courts. "He does not fear us," said one young officer, nervously adjusting his uniform. "He is unshaken, even in the presence of our greatest machines. Is he mocking us?" Another asked, brow furrowed. "No," a third whispered. "He simply sees what we fail to see. And that makes us uncomfortable." Lysra felt that discomfort herself. Every time she tried to assert dominance, to speak proudly and remind him of their superiority, she felt it slipping from her. His silence, his calm, his quiet intelligence, it challenged everything she had believed about strength. One afternoon, Lysra organized a strategic exercise for Aaron. It was meant to show him the complexity of Zerion command, to impress him with the coordination of their forces. Soldiers moved in perfect patterns, machines executed flawless maneuvers, and energy fields blinked with precision. Aaron walked among them, unhurried, eyes scanning every detail. He noted small inefficiencies, gaps in coordination, and predictable sequences in the soldiers' movements. While the Zerions expected him to be amazed or intimidated, he quietly pointed out adjustments that could make the system stronger. The room fell silent. The commander's instructions, meant to display the Empire's perfection, were now being subtly improved by a human. Lysra felt a strange emotion rising, a mixture of surprise, pride, and frustration. Her empire was unmatched, yet this human, with no prideful speech or display, saw solutions she had overlooked. Later, in a private corridor, she confronted him again. "You have no fear, no awe, and no arrogance. How can you remain so calm in the presence of what should terrify you?" she asked, her voice both frustrated and curious. Aaron looked at her steadily. "I am not afraid because I do not need to be. Strength is not only in power or size. It is in understanding, patience, and the courage to act when it is necessary." Lysra's chest tightened. She had always believed that words, ceremonies, and proud displays could shape the perception of strength. But this human, quiet, and measured, challenged that notion without raising his voice or showing off. The tension in the Empire grew. Soldiers whispered, officers doubted, and Lysra herself felt the first cracks in her certainty. She had spoken proudly to assert control, to inspire awe, to remind everyone of their supremacy. Instead, Aaron's calm assessment and quiet competence unsettled them all. That evening, as the sun set over the city, Lysra stood on a balcony overlooking the sprawling empire. She watched Aaron walk among the soldiers, offering insight, quietly observing, never demanding praise. Her pride was still strong, but now it was tempered with respect and unease. She realized something vital. Strength was not always the loudest, the brightest, or the most feared. Sometimes it was the quiet, steady force that acted when needed, that observed when others rushed, and that changed the course of events without shouting. And in that realization, Lysra felt the stirrings of admiration for a human, a species she had long underestimated. Yet who might teach her more about true strength than her empire ever could? It was a day like any other, or so the Zerions thought. The humans had been observing, learning, quietly analyzing every detail of the empire. Lysra had begun to feel the weight of Aaron's calm intelligence, but she believed the empire was still untouchable. She was wrong. A sudden alarm shattered the morning calm. One of the empire's defense systems malfunctioned. Automated turrets, designed to protect against intruders, activated erratically. Energy beams fired across the courtyard, threatening soldiers, civilians, and humans alike. Panic spread like wildfire. Lysra's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Evacuate the area. Contain the system." Her words, though powerful, could not stop the chaos unfolding. Machines that were supposed to be perfect now turned against them, and the soldiers, despite their training, Hesitated. Aaron did not panic. He did not shout. He walked calmly toward the control hub, assessing the situation as he went. His eyes scanned the readouts, his mind calculating, analyzing. Every step was precise, every movement intentional. The Zerions watched in stunned silence. They had expected fear, confusion, even failure from a human, but he was unshaken. Lysra followed him, her pride struggling to stay intact. "You cannot control this," she shouted. "It is beyond you." Aaron did not respond with words. He studied the system, finding patterns in the malfunction, noticing sequences the Zerions had overlooked. With careful, deliberate actions, he rerouted power, disabled dangerous circuits, and synchronized the turrets to shut down. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. The crowd held its breath. Every eye was on him. And then, slowly, the chaos subsided. The turrets powered down, the energy beams ceased, and the courtyard became still again. The Zerions stared in awe. The human, who had spoken little, who had never demanded respect, had stabilized a system they themselves could not control. Soldiers whispered among themselves. How did he do it?" Lysra stepped closer, her glowing eyes wide with a mix of relief and wonder. You just saved us," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the hum of the machines. With calm, with thought, not with power or pride. Aaron looked at her, still composed. Pride and power are not enough. Strength is in knowing what to do when it matters, even when chaos surrounds you. Sometimes the quietest actions have the greatest effect. For the first time, Lysra felt her pride humbled. She had spoken proudly, expecting her words and displays to impress, to intimidate, to show superiority. But this human, through calm observation and decisive action, had demonstrated something far stronger than any parade, any weapon, any speech. The Zerions, who had always believed their empire unbeatable, felt a shift. The humans were not fragile. They were not weak. One man, unassuming and quiet, had reminded them that true strength could come in unexpected forms. Later, Lysra stood before him in the now quiet courtyard. "I spoke proudly, thinking words and displays could define strength, but you have shown me something more." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from awe and realization. Aaron met her gaze with calm certainty. Words can impress, and displays can intimidate, but neither guarantees action. True strength is shown by what we do when it matters most. The Empire had seen great power before, but none like this, a human who spoke little, who did not boast, yet whose mind and resolve had stabilized a crisis that threatened everything. And in that moment, the Zerions understood a new truth. Strength is not always loud, not always proud. Sometimes it is quiet, steady, and unyielding, carried in the mind and heart rather than in speech or weapons. The days after the incident passed in a strange mixture of calm and tension. The Empire was safe once more, but something had changed. The soldiers, once confident in their unquestioned superiority, whispered among themselves. The humans, they realized, were not as fragile as they had believed. And at the center of it all stood Aaron Miles, quiet, steady, and unshaken. Lysra watched him carefully. Every step he took, every glance he cast, carried a calm assurance that unsettled her. Her pride, once untouchable, now wrestled with admiration. She had spoken proudly, expecting him to react with awe or fear. Instead, he had acted decisively in the face of chaos. And now, even in peaceful moments, he carried the weight of quiet strength. One afternoon, she approached him privately, away from the bustling halls and curious eyes. The sunlight glinted off her silver armor-like skin, and her glowing eyes reflected a mix of respect and lingering disbelief. "I have always believed that words, ceremonies, and displays could define strength," she said softly, almost to herself. I thought loudness, pride, and power were what mattered. But you have shown me otherwise." Aaron turned to her calmly, his gaze steady. "I do not seek recognition," he said. "I act when necessary, and I observe when it is not. Words and displays are fleeting. Actions endure." Lysra considered this carefully. She had spent her life teaching others about pride and accomplishment, about showing power and dominance. And yet here was a human with no desire for glory, whose quiet observation and decisive actions had saved countless lives and reshaped the perception of an entire empire. "You speak quietly, but your words carry more weight than I could have imagined," she admitted. "And your actions, they speak louder than anything I have ever witnessed. I believed that strength required pride and display, but now I see that it can also be calm, deliberate, and unassuming." Aaron inclined his head slightly, acknowledging her words. True strength does not need attention. It is measured in endurance, understanding, and courage when it matters most. Pride is often loud because it seeks recognition, but quiet resolve does not need to be noticed to exist. Lysra felt a warmth in her chest, a strange combination of respect and humility. She had underestimated humans for centuries. She had assumed their small size, their lack of advanced technology, and their quiet nature made them weak. And yet, through one human, she had learned that strength could exist in ways she had never considered. The other Zarians began to notice the change in her as well. Soldiers and officers watched as she spoke differently, consulted more thoughtfully, and even asked Aaron for insight on strategies and systems she had once considered perfect. She had begun to respect him, not for his words or pride, but for his mind, his patience, and his quiet courage. That evening, Lysra stood on a balcony overlooking the empire, the sky painted with streaks of pink and gold. She watched Aaron walking calmly among the soldiers, offering guidance and quiet observation. Her pride, once rigid and unyielding, had softened into something deeper, a respect born not from fear or spectacle, but from genuine understanding. "I spoke proudly, thinking words could teach, impress, and assert power," she whispered to herself. "But you have shown me that true strength is quiet, steady, and enduring." And in that recognition, something profound shifted within her. Humanity, through one man's calm resolve, had earned a place not through boastful display or arrogance, but through observation, intelligence, and courage that spoke louder than any proud proclamation. For the first time, Lysra understood that strength could exist in silence, and that sometimes the quietest actions leave the deepest mark. The humans had completed their visit, and were preparing to return to Earth. The grand halls of the Zarian Empire, once filled with confident whispers of superiority, now buzzed with a different energy, a mixture of curiosity, respect, and quiet admiration. Aaron Miles walked calmly through the corridors, his presence unassuming yet commanding, leaving a trail of subtle awe wherever he passed. Lysra walked beside him, her expression soft, her glowing eyes reflecting more than pride. They held respect, understanding, and even gratitude. For weeks, she had witnessed his quiet intelligence, his careful observation, and his ability to act decisively when needed. He had faced the empire without boasting, without arrogance, and yet he had changed the hearts of those who had thought themselves invincible. "You have done more than I imagined," she said softly, almost to herself. "I spoke proudly, thinking words could teach and display power, but you have shown that true strength is calm, deliberate, and steady." Aaron glanced at her, calm as ever. "I did what was needed," he replied simply. "Strength is not measured by words nor by display. It is measured by action, understanding, and courage when it matters most." The Zarians around them, once so confident in their superiority, now looked at humans differently. They whispered of Aaron's composure, his insight, and his ability to face danger without fear. Many had expected humans to be weak, small, fragile, but now they saw a species capable of quiet, unwavering strength. Lysra realized that she had been proud, not to inspire, but to protect her own sense of power. She had believed that loud words and displays were what commanded respect. But Aaron had taught her that true respect comes from action, integrity, and calm resolve. His silence had spoken louder than any boastful speech, and it had left a mark she could not ignore. Before he left, she addressed him once more, her voice filled with honesty and emotion. "You have changed the way I see strength, not just your strength, but humanity's. You have shown me that pride and power are not the only measures. There is value in quiet, in observation, in steady courage. Your actions, they will not be forgotten." Aaron nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "I hope that others will see this too," he said. Strength can exist in many forms. It is not only what is loudest or most visible that lasts. The quiet and thoughtful can endure longer than any display of pride. As he boarded the ship that would take him back to Earth, Lysra watched, understanding something profound. Humanity had arrived not with boasting, not with overwhelming technology or weapons, but with something the Empire could not ignore: calm determination, insight, and the courage to act when it mattered most. Even after the humans departed, their presence remained. Soldiers and citizens alike spoke quietly of the human who had faced the Empire's might without fear, the human whose silence had challenged and inspired them all. Aaron's actions became a story, repeated again and again, not as a tale of war or conquest, but as a lesson in strength, humility, and courage. Lysra, standing on the balcony as the sun set over the city, felt a new kind of pride, not in her empire, but in understanding something deeper. She had spoken proudly once, expecting to command respect, but she had learned that respect, and true strength, often comes quietly, carried in thought, action, and courage that does not demand attention. And in that lesson, humanity earned its place, not through words, nor weapons, nor displays, but through resilience, intelligence, and the quiet power of one man who chose to act when it mattered most. The Empire had seen greatness in many forms before, but never like this. And for centuries to come, the story of Aaron Miles would be told not as a boast, not as a challenge, but as a shining example of what it meant to be human. Silence had spoken louder than any speech. Pride had bowed to quiet strength, and the legacy of one human's courage would endure far beyond the stars.